Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Flying Cat Marketing Interview Series. I'm Maeva Cifuentes, your host, and today I'm speaking to Tanya Hales, who is an event producer, a freelance writer, and the founder of Black Moms Connection, which is a Facebook group with over 15,000 members. So today we're going to learn a little bit about her story and how she manages such a large group, how she works with her volunteer admins. So if you're interested in growing a Facebook group or see what is involved in running one of a big size, this episode is for you. So let's dive right in, and I hope you enjoy. Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Flying Cat Marketing video series. Today, I'm really excited to have Tanya Hales, who's an award-winning event producer, freelance writer, speaker, anti-Black racism consultant, and founder of Black Moms Connection, which is a Facebook group of over, almost 15,000 people, right? Or over 15,000 people.
Over 15.
Women, Black moms around the world. She speaks on workshops and she helps companies grow Facebook groups. And she's also just recently been invited to an exclusive Facebook groups, about growing them. Why don't you tell us about yourself a little bit and how you got into all of this? Tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I have so many titles. I should probably reduce some of those. Maybe that's why I'm so tired.
They're all good, though.
So yes, so by trade and by nature, I'm an event planner. That's what I did when we were able to socially gather. I miss it terribly because it's been something I've been doing for about 15 years or so. I've had my own agency for the past 4 years. So, we'll see what the pivot is and just waiting for this virtual events trend to go away. And then, I've always been a writer and I'm really grateful for the opportunities to write for different media publications when they ask me to. So it's either parenting or it's entrepreneurship or it's whatever random pop culture thing that they want me to write about. And then, Black Moms Connection started as a Facebook group in 2015. I just really wanted a local meetup group for moms that looked like me. And the specific story was I was at a splash pad with my son. He was around 2. And I was like, oh, I wonder if they make sunscreen for Black skin. And I knew that the spaces I was in, I wasn't really going to be able to get answers to those questions. So that's why I created the Facebook group with 12 of my friends. And, it was slow going in the beginning. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, oh, there's a group. Talk amongst yourselves. Learned very quickly that's not how things grow. And so in 2016, we went from 400 to 4,000 in the span of 2 months. And then by the end of that year, we decided to incorporate as a nonprofit. So we are an online global village, but we're also a nonprofit that provides culturally relevant tools and resources to empower and educate Black mothers.
That's amazing. I love that. So you say that you tried to let them talk amongst themselves, and that turns out that it didn't work. So what is it? What are you supposed to do?
I mean, I think that the end of the day, engagement begets engagement. So when you post, and people will comment or they'll like, and then, then they feel empowered to post themselves. So it's like, oh, I saw this, or, hey, I have a question about this. We have a lot of new moms and, and this is universal to motherhood. It's just like, oh, especially when babies get their first heat rash, right? So there's bumps all over their skin. You don't know what it is. You're freaking out. You go to WebMD. Oh my gosh, it's some major disease. Google can be really overwhelming. So they'll put this picture up like, hey moms, what is this? And then it's nice to see when other moms are like, hey, it's just a heat rash. Just have them air dry, and give them advice in real time from other moms. And it's more authentic. And so, that was really just it was a slow, as I said, it was a slow build. The first year we didn't really grow, but I was in there, but I was also doing so many other things. So wasn't really paying attention. I was managing it by myself, which is definitely a whole other part to this conversation. And then in the US, when everything started to happen with Black Lives Matter beginning, Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin, Black women and Black mothers needed a space to say, I'm afraid for myself, I'm afraid for my son. And that contributed to our exponential growth. So then it became, the conversations were just coming. And, I was still engaging, but, it wasn't necessarily now reliant upon me to provide content for this space. So you really do have to treat it like a social media platform or a website or a blog where, people are not going to go to your website and read you if there's nothing to read.
Yeah.
So thankfully, it wasn't just solely on me to do that. I also built out an admin team that, for two reasons. A, we have to make sure that the people who are applying to be in the space are Black mothers. We have men try to join all the time, and I'm like, but that's not. Maybe they just think it's a group full of women who are single and ready to mingle. I'm not quite sure, but so we have to vet that, and all the people who are not Black, and so that is part of our vetting process. And then also we heavily moderate, right? We want to ensure that the conversations don't spiral. It's very easy, right? A simple post on hair could go all the way left because people, even though we're still in this group and, we have these two things in common, being a Black woman who's a mother, people have different mentalities and different values and different morals. And especially now that the group is global, so people don't talk to each other the way that they always should. And so that's when things just derail, and then it becomes catty and name cally and stuff like that. So we're really adamant about saying like, hey, this is supposed to be a safe space for each other, and you cannot render this space unsafe for others. So we, and thankfully, like as the group has grown, I'm really seeing a difference in the tools that Facebook has given us. So, now you can mute someone. So if someone just needs to be put in a timeout, you can literally just mute them for, I think it's up to 24 hours, which is great. It's like literally putting children in a timeout. And sometimes that's just what they need. They don't necessarily need to be removed from the space. They haven't broken a rule. They just need to be cooled down. So, it's been really interesting, but yeah, this group would not grow without the awesome admin teams who are keeping an eye on conversations and doing the hard work of doing all that vetting and going through profiles and being like, oh, okay, yes, she's been wished happy Mother's Day. She's holding a baby that looks exactly like her. Like just doing that work to ensure that the membership stays to what we want it to be.
So how many admins do you have on your team?
6.
And how long did it take you? How long were you running it by yourself?
That's a really good question. I think, probably really just that first year. Once it started getting into the hundreds, and I was just like, oh, we're 100. And it's so funny to think about, like, every time I celebrated like those mini milestones, I'm like, hey, we're at 500 people. Because I could never foreshadowed and foreseen this crazy growth. So I would probably say after the first year, when I realized I'm like, okay, this is something I want to still have, but I need some help and support. So in the beginning, there was myself and 3 other people. And a couple have rotated out. There's 2 that have been admins from the very beginning. And and then now we have a good team of 6. And, I'm always on the lookout for active members who I think would be a good addition to the team. And that's where our moderators and admins come from. But my admin team, they're a small, tight-knit group of ninjas who they're like, nope, we have a system, we're good. So I'm like, okay, you guys let me know when it gets overwhelming and we need to add some more eyeballs and some more bodies. But right now they're happy with how it is. So I'm like, whatever makes my admins happy, because, they're moms who are entrepreneurs or employees, and this is a volunteer thing. So I try not to ask too much of them. But in essence, by rights, it is asking a lot.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you said they have some systems, because I'm also admin in some other Facebook groups, but I feel like there's no system. They just said, kind of make sure, check this and then check that. And then sometimes we chat over Facebook chat in the group. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit what your systems look like?
Yeah.
How you guys set it up?
Yeah, absolutely. So, early on when I started to see its growth, I was like, okay, let me Google what other groups have set up has rules for engagement. And so some things have become kind of universal. And now what's great is, again, when you start a new group, Facebook kind of just allows you to like, they've created some like template rules. So, you know, be respectful, be kind, all this kind of basic generic stuff that we'd like to think adults would be able to adhere to, however. So those are the things. So we have our rules, we have our pin post that like really outlines who we are, what we're about, right? The type of posts that are going to get approved, the things that are not going to get approved, the things that are going to get you blocked. We make it very, very clear. And even our questions, the second question is, do you agree to read the rules when you're accepted and accept those rules, right? So it's kind of like a terms of service. Yeah, people don't read it, but you can't be mad when we boot you for breaking a rule that you said you were going to accept before we even let you into the space. So, you know, having that in place. And then, yeah, we use Facebook Messenger as our primary communication tool. So if there's a post going left, someone be like, hey, this is starting to get crazy. Or even we'll know sometimes before we approve a post, we're like, you know what? Don't approve it unless you or someone else has time to babysit it and watch it, because then you'll be on top of it from the very beginning, as opposed to it's gone all the way left and then now you got to try and bring it back in. So the team is really good at saying like, you know what, tag me in, I've got time right now. Even just like, hey, I don't have it today, so I'm going to be offline. Like, we just let each other know. And then if there is a violation and we've booted someone, we just put their name in the Facebook Messenger group. So then that way, if it ever comes up, and sometimes it has, because people are just like, I got kicked out, why? Then I can go back and search in the Facebook Messenger thread, like, oh, you got kicked out for this reason. And then I don't have to think about like, I don't have to worry or think about why that person left and stuff like that, because it's usually those people who are loudly angry on their social networks, and I try to protect the brand as much as possible. So yeah, you know, we obviously all posts have to be approved. We don't approve all the posts. You know, we might message someone saying, hey, can you add trigger warning or content warning if it's a really highly sensitive subject? You know, and we really just try to make sure that people feel free to post. But again, the primary thing is this a safe space for Black mothers to be in? And, you know, everything we do is centered around that one premise. So it makes it easier to reject a post when we know, hey, this is not going to go well. We're not going to do it.
So now you said that most people are just very engaged on their own, asking a lot of questions there. Do you still have any kind of protocol for you posting content on there?
I post whatever I want, which is, I always like hashtag founders perks. Yeah, so I'm in there. I'll share things that we're doing offline. So, you know, hey, we got nominated for an award or this, at the other. I'll do Facebook Lives, promoting what we're doing over on Instagram with our Instagram Lives. So yeah, I still do post content. If I see something that I know is really relevant, like, hey, here's a list of Black authors that wrote children's books. You know, that's the type of content that I know the moms love. So I'll share that. So I'm very active on social media because I have to be. I'll pull things from everywhere. I'll see a tweet that I think is relevant and I'll post to our page and I'll post in the group. So I am still probably a contributing factor to the engagement. But, you know, I think we have probably, depending on the day, you know, we could have anywhere from, you know, 50 plus posts from various sources throughout the day. And out of our 15K, last time I saw, like maybe over 11,000 are active. So active to Facebook means they've viewed the post, liked or commented on the post. So that's what determines engagement in a Facebook group. So for me, I'm kind of, you know, I'm aware of those who are in the group, because one of the things about Facebook groups and its growth is up until 2016, 2017, you could just add your friends. Mm-hmm. So that was another reason why we had such crazy growth, is because one person would join, they'd be like, I love it here, then add all their friends and all their family. And so we were getting these big clusters all at once because there was no questions. There were none of these like, pre-vetting things. So if you had a Facebook group in those early stages where instead of being invited and having to answer questions, you could just be literally in the group. That's why there's groups who have such big numbers. Now it's slowed down for good reasons. I think it's important to have those vetting processes, but yeah.
I like that you mentioned the engagement. Do you track engagement metrics, and also what other metrics do you track?
I try not to look at that because it's easy to tell what's happening on any given day. I love the little Facebook badges that Facebook assigns to someone. So if they're new, it's a little wave hand. They might have star for like rising star, so that's someone who posts content regularly and engages regularly with the space. So now I have visuals on who's posting. And also when something happens, like say a post gets reported, I'll go and I can always know it's a new person who's just like, who doesn't know our rules, who's reporting a post. And I'm just like, hey sis, you were supposed to read the rules. You know why. We're talking about sex on a Thursday. That's what we do on Thursdays in this space. Oh, okay, I'm so sorry. I didn't check the rules. I'm just like, but you're supposed to. So we track engagement in terms of that. But that doesn't happen very often. Like it's rare that we have reported posts and stuff like that. But usually when there's a derailment, we know our veteran members know the space well enough to know what's happening. And they kind of act as pseudo admins, they keep their eyes out and they're just like, hey, this is not how we roll in this space, which is nice. So sometimes they self-police. Generally speaking, the only really numbers that I look at are our demographic numbers, just because I can use that information when it comes to applying for sponsorship. So we have an event, BMC Finlit, which is our financial literacy day. And so when I'm going to the bank and saying, hey, we have this many members, this is where they live, this is their age range, and those kind of demographic numbers that count to sponsors, then that's really helpful because now I don't have to do a survey and ask. Facebook can tell me, where people are at. And then I can also kind of center my sponsorship asks and posts around that. So it's like, hey, I want to do something in Chicago. We have this many moms in Chicago, like, help us do that type of thing. And so it helps offline as well.
Yeah, but I guess now are you doing some online events within the group now with coronavirus happening?
So yes and no. I wanted to do a weekly live chat with a mom, and Facebook has actually changed how you can do lives. From phone, it's still relatively simple. You literally press a button and you go live. From desktop, they've made it overly complicated. And I was just like, I don't understand. And then also the problem was up until recently, you couldn't have another person join you. So we couldn't do this in Facebook, which is silly. They used to have that capability, then they took it away. Then they saw the rise of IG lives. And then I think they're bringing it back. And I'm like, Facebook, you're going backwards. So I do the weekly Facebook lives on Instagram. And then, there's a tool called Streamyard that, allows me to do exactly that in terms of, have two people have an interview process and then it broadcasts live into Facebook groups. So we haven't done a ton of those, but IG Live seems to be working out well for us.
Cool. I've also heard of StreamYard. I've done some interviews using that, and it does broadcast into the groups and into YouTube and a bunch of other channels, right?
Yeah. If you pay for it, you can have it go so many other places. Okay. So, which is great. Yeah.
So you do some workshops. You give workshops to companies as well that are trying to leverage Facebook groups. So in terms of sales, so I know yours is an NGO and it's not really about growing business, but what advice do you have for businesses or entrepreneurs to leverage Facebook groups in order to grow their businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would definitely say, because most businesses, sometimes we launch without really doing the work and the research. The research is the unsexy part, and I totally get it, but it's really important. You have to know where your audience is. If your audience is on Instagram, having a Facebook group and a Facebook page is pointless. And then it's just going to sit there collecting dust. And then like it just doesn't make you look good. So for me, BMC had a Twitter page, we had Instagram, we have our Facebook page and our Facebook group. I deleted the Twitter because every single time I created it twice actually. And every single time I'm like, I'm not using it. I'm not engaging from it. I'm only one person. I can't. And there are times when I regret it for sure, because I would have been able to amplify, especially in this time that we're in right now with the racial revolution that's happening around the world. But I'm just like, you know what, we can direct people to Instagram, we can direct people elsewhere, because that's where people are. And so that's really important. So know your audience and what platform that they're using. And then what method, right? Most of the times, like, especially our new moms, they're maybe feeding their baby or breastfeeding. They're on their phones. They're not on a computer. So, you have to think of the type of content that you're going to produce. So if you are and want to create a Facebook group, I would say one of the biggest regrets that I have is not having a tool to collect emails from the very beginning. Because at the end of the day, the entire heartbeat of my organization is still rooted on someone else's platform that I don't own. And while I have access to Facebook, and I can touch to that later, if something happens, there goes all the work of 5 years. And yes, we do have a mailing list separately, but it's nowhere near the numbers that we have in Facebook. And as I said, the reason why the numbers are so high, part of the reason why the numbers are so high is because of how Facebook has shifted. And I think even if I'm honest, I think that Facebook groups is what's keeping Facebook alive right now.
Yeah.
People have pages, but people are not going to pages anymore unless they're looking for actual like contact information. Facebook groups is what drives people to stay on Facebook and engage and post. They post to groups. Facebook is investing heavily in it. So I think they had a conference for Facebook group admins and people who run Facebook group communities. Has mentioned, I was invited to a Facebook group for Facebook group admins. So there's a group of us now who get it. We go through the same issues of, content and posting and approvals and angry people and all these things. And these are people who run groups that have millions, 500,000, like it, the numbers just stagger my brain. But it's great to hear from people who are doing the same work, right? And most people, it's volunteer for them. Their admins are volunteers, and Facebook is really investing in giving us tools to better, like, how do you find admins? How do you train your admins? All sorts of units and access to things. They'll tell us what's coming in the pipeline. They're like, hey, this is something that Facebook is working on. We're like, oh, yay, exciting. When is that going to roll out? So we have an insight. And the biggest thing about being in that group is, because Facebook, of course, is this big entity that no one could ever speak to a human being. If I have a problem or a question, I have direct line to Facebook and they'll look into it for me. They see the value in our group to keep it going. And, even recently they promoted Black Moms Connection has one of a Black organizations and Black Facebook groups internally to Facebook. So they put it in the newsletter and they put it elsewhere. Our numbers spiked. They're like, so this happened, so be prepared. And I was like, okay, I'm mentally preparing. And then, we had 400 in a day. So I was like, okay, admins, like it's go time. But it's really, it's an amazing opportunity to have even access in that kind of space and to Facebook in that way. So I'm a big proponent of it, but it's a ton of work. You need support from the very beginning. Write your rules, be very clear on them. be collaborative. It's not a dictatorship for sure. Like, yes, I'm the face, and when I post, I my posts get probably the most engagement because I'm the founder. That being said, if there's an issue or situation and I'm talking with my admin team, sometimes I let them make the call, or sometimes I might veto it if I feel really strongly about something. But they all want to protect the space and the brand to the same level as me. They feel like they have ownership over it, and that's so important to me, because I'm out here trying to get sponsors. I'm trying to build a board. I'm trying to buy a building, right? I don't have time for the day-to-day in the Facebook group. So I want them to be autonomous, but not go rogue. They still got to be to brand. So we now also have chapter groups. So we have we have BMCs that are localized. So I think New York, Atlanta, and a couple of other cities in North America. And so we created a handbook saying like, hey, here's how we expect you to run this subchapter group. And if you have problems, now there's like a big Facebook admin chapter group on Facebook Messenger so that we can chat. And it's just like, hey, for Pride, here's the header that you can use for the month. Or if you're going to take the weekend off, here's what the language should be. And even that, giving them time off. And, sometimes we'll close the group for a weekend just to give the admins a break. Mm-hmm. So, it's really just making sure that if you're going to create this space, that you set yourself up for success, because it's really easy to say like, okay, we started this thing and, whatever. It's going to be slow going in the beginning, but, you have to keep at it and give people a reason why to join and a reason why to stay.
So it's kind of like creating a company culture. I mean, a group culture, setting down your mission, your values, and then finding people who share them so that they do take that ownership of it.
Absolutely.
Becomes a community that they love, right? They want it to keep it nice.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so important. Even also in building companies, I think that what you're saying can apply to a company, getting that culture in place from the start. So everybody's sharing the same vision. Everybody's understanding their purpose within this group.
Exactly.
I have a couple of questions about the Facebook group, about Facebook groups.
Yes.
Meta group. 2 questions. First question, what is your 1 or 2 key takeaways that you have learned that maybe you didn't know before? I'll just ask you that first, and then I'll ask you the second question.
I would say that there are ways to monetize. There are groups who, they run like businesses. I didn't even know that was allowed, much less like possible. So, I have like probably a dozen threads that I've saved to like go back into and review, because the great part is, again, we're not in competition with each other. So they're more likely to share. So that's why I love being in that space, because I want to learn from a group that got all the way up to 1 million. How did you do that? How many admins do you have? How does that even work? What does that even look like? And what does your day-to-day look like? Like, all of my notifications on all my socials are off, other than WhatsApp and email, because if I had my Facebook notifications on, I would get nothing done all day. Yeah. So, it's interesting to see just the insight and the behind the scenes of other spaces. And, one of the other takeaways is, sometimes when people hear about us, especially in this era that we're in, it's just like, oh, Black moms, that's racist and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, if you Google mom groups on Facebook, there's like 500,000, if not more. There's so many Facebook group spaces for moms. And most of them are very homogenized, not diverse spaces. That's just how the motherhood kind of space is. And so one of the takeaways for me in that Facebook group is you can stick to your vision, and you can stick to who you are and who you serve, and be unapologetic about it. And, if someone else wants something, they're free to go start their own Facebook group for what they think that they want. And I think that people, especially in, relating that back to business, people do that. People get caught up in their competition so often, but it's just like, there's enough sunshine for everybody. You go to the grocery store, there's like 4 different kinds of bread. There's like 9 different types of Cheerios. Like this, you can add to the palette of the rainbow of whatever your industry or sector is. And I'm sure that and I'm sure Facebook is very strategic about who they invite, right? I haven't seen it because it's only a couple hundred people. So I haven't seen anyone else who has something similar to me per se. There's probably someone that runs a mom's group, but not a Black moms group. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't probably put us in the same space. So, like just even in terms of, who they're bringing together so that we can learn from people who we have similarities, but we have enough differences that we can still learn from each other.
Yeah. Amazing. I love that. I also think that competition isn't as big a deal as everybody makes it out to be, as long as you're being unique and you're just serving the specific people you want to serve in your specific way, then there's something for everybody. Because like you said, everybody has different needs. There's no reason to get crazy about the competition at all. And creating a space where you can share with other people is just amazing. My second question is, so what is coming up in the pipeline?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me.
Are you allowed to say?
Probably not. I don't, Facebook is always watching. So I feel like I don't want to get myself into trouble. But I'll just say like sometimes it's just like, tools for us as admins. So as I said, like, they're just like, hey, here's how to recruit new admins and build out an admin structure, which is helpful, right? Because so many of us, we just like we create these things with no plan or structure, and then like something that, what's an example that I can probably share? So they have like units now. And so they introduced a domestic violence unit. So it's in a separate tab in Facebook groups, but now there's all sorts of resources. And for me, leading a mom's group, that's super important because that is a very important topic, of course, in a mom space. So now I don't have to create a post. This is something that's going to live in the Facebook group that's created technically by Facebook, that's relevant to the space. And so I think that they've done other units before, but this is the first one that I really saw that I was just like, accept, right? And so there's
units? I apologize. Sorry.
Yeah, so it's a template unit with like information laid out. So in this particular case with domestic violence, it gives phone numbers and it gives like tips and tools. They did the same thing similarly for COVID. So there was like a COVID unit. So they do these things, they build these things out so that way we don't have to do the work. So they're now partners. Which is awesome, because you build these things and yes, it's on someone else's platform and stuff like that. But you always felt like you were out on an island. And if something was going wrong, like there was never going to be a way to be supported. And so now I feel like I have a partner who they see what we're doing. Obviously they see all the things and they know why it's important. And they feel that towards us. So it's a pretty awesome space.
Amazing. Well, I've already gone over time. I got really stuck into this amazing conversation. Thank you so much for spending this time with me and sharing your experience. If anybody's watching this as a Black mom, you should definitely join the Black Moms Connection Facebook group. And where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So BMC is all over the socials. We are on Instagram and we are on Facebook, of course. And then I am on Twitter personally at @thales.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, all the way from Toronto. And have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Flying Cat Marketing Series. If you enjoyed this interview, please give it a like, share it with your friends and colleagues, and subscribe to this channel. Stay tuned because next week I'll be interviewing another leader in the SaaS and startup world talking about their challenges and achievements. See you there.